On this episode of Incense Magick, we're going to take a look at the ancient, and sometimes mysterious, art of making incense pellets. Many different cultures from around the world have used incense like this for thousands of years, but the humble incense pellet is often overlooked by modern incense users. So today we're going to make two different types of incense pellets so you can explore some of the virtually endless ways you can use incense pellets in your own practices. They're easy to make. They require no special tools or ingredients, and they smell amazing. All of that and more on this episode of Incense Magick. The incense pellet is likely the oldest form of processed incense. Although the birth of incense pellets is shrouded by the mists of time, most experts agree that incense pellets are very likely an outgrowth of herbal medicine. Many herbal remedies that have been given by healers to their patients are very beneficial, but they often taste terrible. In the modern era, we put such herbs into unflavored gelatin capsules so they can be easily swallowed without having to taste the herbs. In the ancient world, this wasn't an option, so healers would often blend medicinal herbs with honey or other tasty ingredients. Like Mary Poppins said, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Now, these types of herbal medicines might contain just one healing herb, or they might contain a blend of many different ingredients. At some point, someone decided to see what would happen if they placed one of these herbal pills onto charcoal or some other heat source. The intense fragrance rewarded them instantly with an unexpectedly pleasant scent. Well, while you can use the same model that we use for self-combusting incense, that is a combination of base, aromatic, and binder, incense pellets don't have to follow the same kind of rigid rules that are often followed for making sticks and cones. If an ingredient is difficult to burn, it just doesn't matter with a pellet. The heat source will ensure that the incense will burn in spite of the ingredients that you might select. Now that means that difficult to use herbs and even woods can be incorporated into incense pellets without fear of creating incense that won't burn. Incense pellets most often use a base of charcoal to provide them with solid heat. It's an even heat as they burn. It's also said that charcoal speeds the curing process, although I'm not really aware of any formal research having ever been done on that idea. Honey is the most traditional binder that's used for making pellets, but it's not the only binder that will work well. Incense made using honey as a binder is initially very, very sticky. It can be difficult to handle and difficult to package when it's first made. But after aging for as little as 2 weeks, that stickiness starts to go away and the incense becomes far easier to handle. Traditional incense pellets, called neri-koh in Japanese, are often stored for a year or more in an airtight environment before ever being used. This most often is accomplished by placing the finished pellets into a ceramic container and then burying it for a year or more. During that time, the incense makes a remarkable transformation. After curing's progressed, the once sticky, gooey incense changes into a pliable black lump of charcoal that's no longer sticky, and it's usually pretty easy to handle. The aging process also helps the various scents in the pellet to merge into a single new scent. So let's start with a very traditional Japanese style pellet. So begin just as you would when making sticks or cones. Measure and blend all of the dry ingredients until the mix is one uniform color. And as always, your ingredients should be completely dry and powdered, although you can use much coarser powders than you would for self-burning incense. So begin with 1 1/4 teaspoons of sandalwood. Add 1 teaspoon of clove, 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon of star anise, and 1/4 teaspoon of benzoin cyan. Now you might notice that each ingredient is 1/4 teaspoon less than the ingredient that came before it. That's why I call this blend 5-4-3-2-1 neri-koh. It uses 5 1/4 teaspoons of sandalwood, 4 1/4 teaspoons of clove, 3 1/4 teaspoons of cinnamon, etc. And once the powdered ingredients are completely blended, you can begin adding honey to bind the ingredients into pellets. Just as with adding water to self-burning incense, don't add any more honey than is absolutely needed. You want to add just enough so that the ingredients will stick together. If you do add too much, it doesn't have quite the same impact as too much water in self-burning incense. The incense will still cure and burn fine. It's just going to take longer to cure, and it's initially going to be stickier. So mix everything with a mixing stick until it's mostly blended, then begin to knead the incense by hand. I definitely recommend that you wear gloves for this process because the mixture will be very sticky. You can knead it without the gloves, but be prepared to spend a lot of time washing your hands. So knead the mixture until it's one uniform color. You want to watch out for dry spots. They're always lighter in color. You want to make sure there's an even distribution of the honey. So once the incense is blended and kneaded, you should be able to roll the incense into a ball much like you would with self-burning incense. Just drop that ball into a plastic bag and press out as much of the air as possible before you seal the bag up. Press the incense itself so that it makes good contact with the plastic and has the least amount of air inside the bag as possible. And if you find the mixture is super sticky and you can't easily remove it from your gloves, try this trick. When you remove the gloves, turn them inside out. You can then squeeze the air out of the glove just as you would with the bag, and then you tie off the opening. The incense will cure right inside the glove. So wait about 2 weeks and then open the bag or the glove. If you used a lot of honey, you might have to wait longer than that, but usually by the time the incense has been sealed for 2 weeks, you can open the bag or glove and remove the incense. Just peel the plastic away from the incense. You might have to cut the bag to do that, and then remove the incense. And you'll find that it's undergone an amazing transformation. The once sticky mixture is much easier to handle. You might also see tiny crystals on the surface of the incense. That's actually crystallized honey. So once the incense is out of the bag, break off small pieces and roll the incense into balls about the size of a pea. Once all the pellets have been rolled, place them inside a fresh plastic bag or a glass jar, seal it, and store it where it's going to be away from sunlight and heat. Now you can burn pellets just as soon as you roll them, but allowing them to age further will improve the scent even more. And this type of incense is regularly burned as part of the Japanese tea ceremony, and it's enjoyed by incense connoisseurs around the world. The real thing is that you're going to be amazed at the incredible perfume-like scent that these modest little pellets will give you. Now, let's make a batch of pellets that uses a charcoal base. Remember, whenever you use charcoal powder in your incense, that you need to use natural incense charcoal, not self-lighting charcoal that's so commonly sold in shops and online. You can powder natural charcoal bricks, or you can purchase the charcoal that's already powdered. I prefer to use alder charcoal for pellets, but charcoal from any type of wood will work. Just purchase your charcoal from a reputable seller and avoid any kind of self-lighting charcoal. Self-lighting charcoal is loaded with saltpeter or potassium nitrate, and it burns very hot and it smells terrible. It can unexpectedly spark or sputter, even pop, damaging or destroying your incense, not to mention posing a fire hazard. So if your charcoal comes in a roll, check the label carefully. Aside from the charcoal rounds that I sell, I'm not aware of any charcoal that's sold in the round in a roll that's free from potassium nitrate and other nasty ingredients. So this recipe is a winter incense blend. It uses a blend of 2 different base woods, but you can use just one if you wish. So start with 1 teaspoon of red sandalwood and 1 teaspoon of red cedar. Add a teaspoon of clove, a half a teaspoon of natural charcoal powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of frankincense, a 1/4 teaspoon of juniper berries, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. Once again, add just enough honey to help the incense hold together properly, but don't add any more than is absolutely necessary. And for this recipe, you might try plum jam or mint jelly rather than honey for a different kind of winter scent. So mix all of the ingredients completely and seal in a bag just as you did with the previous batch. Now you're going to notice right away that the charcoal makes this blend much darker than the first batch we made. Now, once you've allowed your pellets to cure for a few weeks, or much longer if you wish, you can begin to put them to use. You'll need an external heat source such as a charcoal tablet, an aroma lamp, or an electric incense heater. That will supply that needed external heat. Now, as with most incense, lower heat is usually better than high heat. The low heat helps to release the scent of your blend, but it also helps to give it a much longer life. Above all else, please avoid using the self-lighting charcoal that we talked about. The high heat from it is an issue, but the smell of the burning potassium nitrates are really the biggest problem, at least for me. Remember that if you're using natural charcoal, you can bury the charcoal safely under the ash to reduce the amount of heat that reaches your pellets. Now, even though cured incense pellets are not very sticky, if you decide to use an aroma lamp, it's a good idea to put a tiny bit of foil in the bottom of the cup. Just place your incense directly on the foil and then discard that foil once the incense is finished. You can easily discard the foil without leaving any trace of the incense. Now, that's important because you don't want bits of leftover incense interfering with the smell the next time you burn a pellet. So it's really pretty simple, isn't it? You don't need any special tools, and you can work with much coarser ingredients than you would for sticks or cones. Pellets are probably one of the very best types of incense for new incense makers because they're so very forgiving. Just be patient and allow your incense to age before you attempt to roll pellets or burn it, and you'll be rewarded with awesome incense to give as gifts or to enjoy for yourself. Well, that's it for this episode of Incense Magick. I hope you enjoy your adventures with incense pellets. Let me know how your pellets work out. I would love to hear from you. Well, until next time, bright blessings.